a lot of different people about what they think about the indictment, this new indictment, 37 counts against Trump and his co-conspirator, Waltine Nauta. Now, you'll hear it pronounced Nata or pronounced Nata, and maybe if you say it real fast, but I want to give every syllable of Nauta its due. So I say Nauta. If you say it real fast, like, let's get rid of this name, Nata. Just like people say Guillermo when they are really anglicizing my name. But of course, it's Guillermo. And people will even argue with me about that. Say, no, it's not. It's Guillermo. No, it's Guillermo. Okay. Anyway, I've been writing a column about Waltine Nauta, the other co-conspirator, and I posted it today on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. You can catch it there. You can also catch it on Inquirer.net. Look, this is an important story because I guess it was too much to think that this would be it. You had high-ranking Republicans, coming out and saying, look, I don't know how Donald Trump can escape this. I don't know how he can do this. The indictments were unsealed on Friday, and we were hoping that people would just go away and do their homework. And I trust, because some of you, or most of you, are Asian American. You probably did your homework, right? And you read, and go to the ALDEF blog and go to the link. There's a downloadable file where you can click on it and read it. And then I see a poll that was taken this weekend, and the poll shows that most Republicans are they're intractable. They will not move off Trump. I keep saying that. Now, will you quit him? Now, I got a call from a friend of mine who I haven't heard from in a while. But at every juncture of Trump's every fall that Trump makes, I think, oh, now for sure, people are going to have to say, that's it, we're quitting him. And I couldn't believe the text I got from my Trumpy friend, who I've talked about. I said I would not reveal his identity so he could be totally honest and candid. He said, he starts off not by saying I'm for Trump, he starts out by saying, I cannot think of an executive branch more incompetent than the Biden-Harris administration. Trump's positive accomplishments were all reversed by Biden, such as the border, energy, economic prosperity, etc. It is scary where the left is leading the USA. He thinks Joe Biden is the left leading the left is not leading the USA. I'm sorry to say. Adam Schiff is grand liar, this fellow says. Too bad Californians might vote him to be their next U.S. senator. So I asked him, I said, you didn't say, are you for Trump still? And he says, Trump versus Biden will be a close one. Trump has had more followers of about 30% of the population, he says. And then he says, and then I asked him, come on, are you off Trump? Are you for DeSantis? He says there are equally 30% who will never vote for him. Meaning, I guess that means he's referring to Trump. Biden is unelectable. Trump could be unelectable even against a mediocre Democratic candidate. Candidates like DeSantis, Tim Scott can easily beat Biden. So it looks like he's ready to go off Trump, but he still is very Trumpy. This is an Asian American guy. I like Vivek, he says. He's a super smart guy. I love his conservative thinking. He comes out as a new candidate. Even Nikki Haley and Glenn Youngkin would be alternatives to Trump and could change the current leftist administration. So, look, there are people who still, despite all the news and the hubbub about these indictments that were handed down against Trump and his cohort, like here's a poll that said, if convicted over classified documents, should Trump be able to serve again? And 80%, I believe this is just of Republicans, say yes, and 20% say no. So there's something that's dawning on people that should have been apparent, that it's almost like Trump is the Terminator. He doesn't go away. He's the zombie megalomaniac. I mean, because, he's not truly conservative. He's conservative enough when he wants to be. But he's more like this megalomaniacal, egotistical guy who is hell-bent on being an American fascist. And so these top secret documents, these, that are just all over the, mishandled, clear violations of the Espionage Act, he's convinced people that it doesn't matter. But you know what? It does. It does. Hey, welcome to Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. And tomorrow is the charges are actually read to Trump and Waltine Nauta. And so that's really the only news. And actually, it's kind of good that that's the case, because there are a lot of things that could be out there that aren't out there. Like I said, the civil rights community is looking for that decision from the Supreme Court on affirmative action. But, chances are they're going to wait till the air clears. I mean, part of me says, oh, maybe they want it when it's busy so that no one will notice that they made the decision they made, because people are anticipating they're going to reverse affirmative action with this impending announcement. But maybe they're proud of the announcement. Maybe they want people to know. And so that would mean waiting at least until Wednesday's news cycle. So then it gets dumped Wednesday afternoon, talked about on Thursday, long weekend on Friday. So that's kind of where I'm thinking the Supreme Court might do its thing to, it looks like they made deep six affirmative action. But as I said last week, we got this weird shape of the Supreme Court come out in this voting rights case, a 5-4 court, not a 6-3 conservative court, but a 5-4 court that was actually liberal, upholding the Voting Rights Act. And this is the same court, conservative court, that's been nickel and diming the Voting Rights Act. And instead, they upheld it and said, you in Alabama, you got to redo the map, because it's not fair what you're doing to the black voters in Alabama. You got to make a second map. So who knows? I mean, and maybe they're just trying to fool us, but we'll see. Anyway, back to the indictment. I mean, this being a show primarily for, you don't have to be Asian American, but I've just been focused on Waltine Nauta, and I wonder where you stand if you're Asian American, where you stand on the Waltine Nauta scale. And what I mean by that is it's a kind of unofficial loyalty scale that Asian Americans know all too well from U.S. history. And there's always been a kind of, controversial issue. Where do you stand, Asian Americans? Like, for Japanese Americans in World War II. It was on the incarceration, the difference between incarceration and freedom, the so-called internment. I mean, there were Japanese who stood up and said, "We're not going." And they're calling me now saying, "We didn't go. We didn't go, Emil." And there were Japanese Americans who willfully went. I mean, there were Asian Americans who said, "Look, I'm Filipino. I'm not Japanese, or I'm Chinese. I'm not Japanese. Don't incarcerate me." I mean, and then there was also something else during World War II where another group of Asian Americans, the Filipinos, they had their own 1st and 2nd regiments in the racist U.S. Army, the segregated army. Only non-citizen units in World War II. They had non-citizens. Filipinos were non-citizens fighting World War II. So there are all these ways that one could prove their loyalty. And now here in 2023, we have Waltine Nauta, the so-called body man of Trump, adding a new historical marker on the AAPI loyalty scale. And what would you do for your country if you're asked to do the things that Donald Trump asked you to do? Would you be loyal to your country or loyal to your boss, Donald Trump? I mean, that's one of the issues, one of the questions no one's asking about or no one's talking about when they talk about Waltine, Walt for short, Walt Nauta. Think about that, because there's some question. Takeout raised it last week, the former White House special counsel. He was interviewed by CNN, and he said, what a tragedy that Waltine Nauta was not persuaded to cooperate with the prosecution, to cooperate with the special counsel. So you got to ask today, why is Waltine Nauta still sticking by Donald Trump? I mean, is it the same reason why Republicans are sticking by Donald Trump? And if it is, then maybe tell me, is that why you could look at Waltine Nauta, the Navy veteran, the body man of Trump, retired from the Navy, went to work worked as a steward while he was still in the Navy in the White House, and then worked privately for Trump, 6-figure salary, $135,000 or so a year, loyal to Trump, but perhaps to a fault. But is he kind of a model for everyone else who is sticking by Trump? Because it would seem like that. And I'm not talking about just Asian Americans, although they're, like, I was reading that text from my Filipino American friend who's sticking by Trump. Still, he's sort of like my barometer. Every time, like I said, Trump does something bad, I keep saying, now are you off him? Now are you quitting him? Nope. Still, no. And it's like every other Republican, every other, not just AAPI Republican, but just Republican. They're not going off Trump. In fact, the polls that are out today, the ones I saw, put Trump maybe gaining on his opponents. At some point, the opponents are going to have to show the courage, because the same AAPI loyalty, it's going to come down to American loyalty. Where do you come down for the country and our democracy, or Donald Trump? And that's the thing that bugs me, because it's like Donald Trump hasn't lost a step. 37 count indictment, well evidenced. I mean, mere mortals would not stand up to the pressure, right? And he's like speaking in Georgia, like we're gonna win, we're gonna beat these fascists. He's calling the pro-democracy folks fascists. This is, you want to talk about someone mentioned that this is the anniversary date of 1984 and doublespeak and George Orwell. We're in it. I mean, we've been in it, and Trump times is 1984, where the rhetoric is so filled with lies. And there's Trump at the GOP Georgia meeting on Saturday saying, yeah, these guys aren't just deep state, they're communists, they're fascists, and we got to beat them. We got to end their reign, and then America will be free again. And it's like 15 seconds of cheering. I couldn't believe it. So if that's not you, if you're saying, come on, Emil, that you're going overboard now. Okay, well, if that's not you, then I encourage you to go to my website at aaldef.org/blog, open up the Waltine Nauta essay I did, column, and then click the link and have your friends download the indictment. Read it yourself. I mean, really, it's easier reading than a textbook in organic chemistry. It is. It's just laid out. Allegations are there. 37 felony charges connected to how classified documents were inappropriately handled, stored, and moved, violations of the Espionage Act. There were also charges of obstructing justice and making false statements, all of it substantiated by evidence and photographs with possible consequences of decades of prison time. I mean, this is serious. Now, if a Martian, the old Martian ploy, huh, Emil? Yeah. Now, if a Martian read the indictment, he'd wonder why there wasn't a better bathroom to store top secret documents on Earth. It's like, I mean, this is supposed to be Earth, top secret documents, and the best they can do is like a toilet, a granite top vanity, shower, the lake room, they call it. And then the Martian would also wonder how a man like Trump could have been seen as qualified to be president in 2016, let alone be the leading candidate for Republicans in 2024. I mean, Trump, twice impeached, found liable of sexual assault in a civil case, now facing more than 70 state and federal criminal charges, with more to come in at least 2 other cases. I mean, really? Is Trump qualified for the presidency? Now, I just read you that poll that said 80%, if he were convicted on these documents, 80% said, yeah, he can run again. Are you kidding me? See, it doesn't make sense. It's almost like it doesn't make sense. It's like a more virulent form of 1984. The rhetoric doesn't make sense. The actions don't make sense. Trump qualified for the presidency? No. And yet everyone says, yeah, he can run again. I mean, if a Martian were to see this, it just wouldn't seem possible in any galaxy. But it must be a case of affirmative action for whites. How do you explain this? Oh, well, he's got a legacy, that Donald Trump. Yeah, he's got all those people he's put in jail. The guy who ran his company, Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels case. But as I was saying, there was Trump at the Waffle House on Saturday with Waltine. And where was that level of indignation and repulsion? I went out a couple of times over the weekend. I didn't see anyone talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, that's Trump or something, some form of that. And there was Trump, on the podium playing victim, claiming, oh, the deep state is weaponizing government. He really said the deep state was really like the communists and the fascists. They're the communists and fascists in America. They're out to get them. And then he said this. He said, if you put me back in the White House, the Democrats, essentially, their reign will be over and America will be free, a free nation again. And he got 15 seconds of solid applause. 15 seconds. He could have milked that for 30. But, he can't keep his mouth shut for that long. 15 seconds. So I'm just concerned about all this. I mean, as a good American, on my loyalty scale is dinging like, uh-oh, get away from Trump. You're not loyal to Trump. You're loyal to America. You're loyal to American values. And maybe I hope this is what AAPIs are taking away. Asian American Pacific Islanders. Because you're in the U.S. because our families escaped oppression and anti-democratic forces in our ancestral homes. Many of us, be it in China, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, Nepal, Bhutan, Asian countries large and small. Many of us are here because freedoms were stripped in the land of our ancestral homes. We know the difference between autocracy and democracy. So should all Americans. If some stop blindly cheering Trump long enough to read the indictment, you can get the indictment, just Google it or go to my blog on the ALDEF site, aaldef.org/blog. Go to the column I wrote on Nauta. I hope you do. But I'll tell you, I was driving around in the red part of the blue state of California. And I see someone hadn't read the indictment and instead spray painted a concrete overpass with the words, kill Dems. That's what you got to worry about. The violence. And that's why they're talking about security in Miami for the hearing tomorrow. And they're talking about on subsequent days, another January 6th. I mean, it's real. The domestic terror threat we know is real. And you start seeing signs like that on the roadway, as I did here in California. Well, things are not normal. People are not reacting normally as they should to this. It is historic. This historic document. I mean, you could say historic document never happened. And what are Republican leaders doing? The Republican leaders are not leading. They're not saying, yeah, this our country, we need to save it from leaders like this. Regardless of what party, we have to come together, protect our values, protect our institutions. Instead, they're all acting like Trump is normal. So back to that indictment. When I first read it, I cheered for justice, accountability, the rule of law, finally, right? But I admit, when I held the document, because I printed it out, all 49 pages. In fact, I had 2 copies. I printed it out twice by mistake. I dwelled for more than a moment on that first page. Because the stark print just stops you cold. United States of America, it reads, meaning all of us, versus Donald J. Trump and Waltine Nauta. One of us, the 40-year-old, and I'm talking AAPI, right? Interesting history. 40-year-old Guamanian native. He just put the AAPI in the evolving, sordid political history of Trump. I mean, who's the ex-president's new running mate? I mean, that's what you call Nauta, really. He's Trump's running mate in a broader sense. Vice President or former Vice President Mike Pence, the hang Mike Pence guy, he's not Trump's running mate. He's actually making his own history as the first Veep ever to directly challenge his old boss. Ever. I mean, it's not Mike Pence. It's not another AAPI like Nikki Haley or Vivek Ramaswamy. The latter's so quick to pander to Trump's base by promising to pardon Trump. No, Trump's running mate is definitely our AAPI man Nauta, Trump's own personal valet and now newly minted co-conspirator. You know, it struck me as odd, right? Like a bit of negative diversity. The first AAPI on the pile of those who have sold their soul to Trump, including those who have actually done time, such as attorney Michael D. Cohen, who's kind of seen generally as a good guy now because he's very anti-Trump. We haven't heard from the CFO of the Trump organization, Alan Weisselberg, but he spent some time behind bars. I mean, there are those who have only been key enablers like Rudy Giuliani. His fate is yet to be determined. Or there are enablers who've been somewhat rehabilitated like Bill Barr, the former attorney general who tells Fox News of the indictment this weekend, if even half of it is true, then Trump, is toast. These are all guys who are, cronies of Trump, enablers. But they didn't get jail time like Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon. Of course, all of them, white men all, pardoned by Trump. And maybe that's what Nauta is hoping for, be loyal, stick to Trump, ride the winner, get what the big boys get, a pardon. It would have been easier not to break the law in the first place, though, I think. It would have been easier just to be loyal to America and not to the boss. As what happens in political circumstances. I mean, when I went to Washington to work in 1991, 92, boss meant something entirely different compared to all the jobs I'd had. Now, Nauta has reportedly told his family in Guam he did nothing wrong. He just did as he was told by Trump. He carried Trump's boxes out of his storage room, 64 boxes at first, but then brought back only 30. Was he hiding the balance so they couldn't be retrieved and returned to the archive? Nauta is seen on video moving boxes. There's an interview of him where he contradicts the video. The video doesn't lie. That's just blind loyalty to Trump. But then, like I said, was Nauta any worse than even the most ardent Trump supporter, AAPI or not, who over the weekend after the indictments were released, still chooses to cheer him on? I mean, you could look at Walt Nauta and look at Look at the 56, 60% of Republicans who say, hey, we want this guy, not Ron DeSantis, not Nikki Haley. So this is where we're at. But in my column, I also dwell a little bit on the Guamanian background of Nauta because, and I call him Nauta, not Nata, because, like I said, his name is anglicized as Nata, N-A-T-A, which sounds like nada or nothing, which is how media folks seem to want to patronize him. Nauta is a Guamanian name, a combination of the indigenous Chamorros and the first Filipinos who arrived in Guam, and get this, 1500 BC. I mean, we're not just talking about a couple of ships that came in and populated that island in the Northern Marianas region. No, we're talking about the Filipinos, 1500 BC, the first to arrive in Guam. So you look at Chamorros and the Filipinos, they're mixed. It's a mixed culture there in Guam. I tried to reach Nauta back in October 2022 when his name first was revealed as a person of interest. I wasn't able to reach him or his lawyer, but I've chosen, when I say his name, to give every single syllable its due. So I don't say Nata. I don't even say Nauta. I say Nauta. Nauta. I go slow. I say it with respect. I mean, I think it's due him. I don't judge him. But I notice how many people in the media like to come up with patronizing comments about his job. Glorified pool boy, one national TV anchor called him, as if the standard reference as Diet Coke boy wasn't bad enough. Yeah, he gave Diet Cokes to Donald Trump. But he did more. Navy veteran. Remember, thank you for your service, right? Now, Nauta, though, has to be used to that kind of disrespect, being a native Guamanian. And I mean that because even in official circles, right, by virtue of being a federal territory, if you're born in Guam, you're not a U.S. You're a U.S. citizen, but you can't vote in federal elections. You could do as the colonized do, or did. You can serve. You can serve in the military. And Guamanians enlist in the U.S. military at a higher rate than any state in the nation. 1 in every 20 of Guam's 165,000 residents is a military veteran. Nauta, who enlisted in the Navy as a teenager in 2001, rose up the ranks. I mean, he's an enlisted person. So in the non-commissioned ranks, Chief Petty Officer, the highest. And among the highest of those petty officers, the naval steward spot in the White House. That's a plum job for an enlisted person. Sure, you're in the mess detail, but you're serving the commander-in-chief. And that man inside the White House, when you're there, Donald J. Trump, he likes you, Walter J. Nauta. You know, in some ways, Nauta is the ideal body man, or as I prefer to call it, he's a Trump adherent. Guamanians don't have a vote in federal elections, right? They have a non-voting delegate in Congress. There's no electoral college. They don't count in presidential politics. Imagine what that does to your self-esteem. I mean, you don't count. In some ways, it's perfect for Trump, like having a non-citizen to, be his body man. But imagine you working in the White House and you understand how, what Guamanians mean to this country. How do you prove? How do you lift your self-esteem? Unless there's this, what it does, I would imagine, it creates this urgency and purity of loyalty and service. Because you want to prove your existence. Because you don't exist otherwise. You can't vote for president in the United States. And now here you are, you're serving this man, a Guamanian in the White House. So you show you care. And it shows that you matter because you have this urgent sense of loyalty and service to your boss. So reports say Nauta was seen as generally caring of everyone he served. But of Trump, it's been noted that Nauta seemed to lack any ulterior motive to cash in on his closeness to the Donald. He wasn't going to sell his Diet Coke secrets or, his favorite cookies. This is maybe the highest compliment that you could pay to Nauta. Unlike the others, he wasn't a sycophant. It was his job to kiss butt. Imagine that. I'm paid to kiss butt. I'm a sycophant. He said he's not a sycophant. All those other guys. Giuliani, Flynn, Bannon. Telling you. That may have been the highest compliment you could pay to Walter Nauta. Man, he was good at his job. He kissed butt for a living and he did it well. And he wasn't a sycophant. He was paid to do that. Former White House attorney, Takeout, who predicted that Trump would be convicted and face prison time, talked about Nauta, the co-conspirator, in a completely different way. He was caring toward Nauta because he knew him. He said, I'm shocked that Nauta, wasn't adequately represented enough to be persuaded to abandon what is, I think, his perception that he is still serving his country because of his devotion to a man he looked up to in the job he was proud to have as an aide to the President of the United States. How else can you explain it? Now, Uta, who served as the White House valet, who when Trump left, took the boxes, and he took Nauta. He took Nauta with him. Nauta retired, working for the man. Now you're beholden to this guy, and you still think you're serving the country because you believe in this guy. And Cobb, who worked some late nights there in the White House as he was special counsel, White House special counsel, he said, look, Nauta's neither a policy guy nor an ideologue. He wasn't a wheeler dealer. He was just a man who simply was loyal to his boss. And he was genuinely nice. Cobb said he made meals for people working around the White House. Many of us who work late at night, he would check in on us to see if we wanted anything to eat. He couldn't be a kinder, more thoughtful guy. This is Cobb. And Cobb said Nauta's failure to be able to work out an arrangement with the government is a tragedy of the highest proportion. a quote tragedy of the highest proportion. So now get this. The government wanted Nauta's cooperation to turn on Trump. In one instance, Trump lawyers charged that the Justice Department tried to coerce Nauta to cooperate by bringing up his attorney's pending application to a judge in Washington, D.C. Didn't work. The attorney, Stanley Woodward, complained about it. But none of Trump's attorneys or Nauta's own attorney did what they should have done at that point. They should have acted in Nauta's best interest. They should have said, hey, there's a reason why all the white guys have been got pardoned. There's a reason why people close to the president who may have known more than you are not named in this indictment, but that you, Waltine, Nauta are. And so that's because they have better lawyers. Walt Nauta. The indictment says he moved boxes at least 5 times, that he loaded them up on a plane, that he discovered a spilled box with top secret documents of the U.S.'s top 5 allies, and he took a picture of the spilled box and shared it. That's a serious felony allegation right there. If you don't have top secret clearance, you're not supposed to do that. Take a picture, share it with somebody. At that point, I just wish someone could have laid out Nauta's options to hire a non-Trump connected attorney so that Nauta could act in his own interest and to his country, not to Donald Trump. So this is really, I go into this, I mean, today, Trump is, I guess they're going to come up with a defense. I guess they're going to say not guilty. I guess he's talked to Nauta and said, hey, we're sticking together. I'll take care of you legal wise. If I'm Nauta, I'd be worried because Trump fired the lawyers who had been working for him last week, just before the indictment was unsealed. I mean, but there's Nauta saying, well, if it's good enough for Trump, it's good enough for me. And someone needs to disabuse him of that. Someone needs to shake him and say, come on, Waltine, it's not too late. There's still time to flip. You know, it's in Trump's best interest to control Nauta until he no longer needs him, right? As a co-conspirator, Nauta is ideal. He always feels beholden. He has no interest in power, only in expressing his loyalty. And that maybe we know. Actually, we know it's the only thing that matters to Trump. You give me your loyalty, I'll stick by you as long as I feel like it. Fortunately, that is the truth. So, Waltine, there's still time to flip. It just may be harder to do that more than one thinks. You know, when you're weighted down by all that Guamanian history, the colonial mindset of service and loyalty, you know, Nauta, you look at him and he's got that look of a retired enlisted Navy man willing to go down with the ship. But on my AAPI loyalty scale, I'd rather be a star witness for democracy and not a co-conspirator against it. The body man must know more. Some people say, look, everything that the body man knows, that where he's relevant in the indictment, well, public records, there's other ways to get that. You don't, some people say you don't need Waltine Nauta. I say you get the body man, there's going to be more. So I hope, just like I hope Republicans, AAPI, and otherwise come to their senses, I just hope Waltine Nauta comes to his. I say flip, Waltine, flip. I don't know. I think he's going to enter a plea Tuesday, but there's still time. I think there's still time for him. I mean, he probably couldn't get as much now as he would have early. It's all timing. When they asked him in October if he cooperated then, who knows? He might have gotten a better deal. The longer he waits, the less of a deal he gets. It's kind of sad. But that is the Waltine Nauta dilemma, and you can see how that loyalty scale, the AAPI loyalty scale, are you loyal to America or are you loyal to Trump? And you could see why maybe he's tilting Trump, but he should be tilting American democracy, just like all the Republicans. It's frankly kind of sickening to see that the Republicans have taken this stance that, oh, it's political, oh, it's the deep state, oh, it's a stunt. And of course, Republicans they want to win. They think they can win with Trump. But it's not the way. It's not the way. So, a couple things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Unabomber briefly. The Unabomber briefly because, there was something about what happened to him. He was used in an experiment at Harvard. He was already pretty isolated. He was already a young kid, 16, got a scholarship to go there. And you've got to wonder how that may have affected him in some way. I mean, his going to Harvard was a traumatic experience. And I just normally, right? Just normally it was traumatic. But because he was put through this psychological experiment, much of which has been, documents have been destroyed. We only know about it because someone who wrote about Kaczynski later, who's now passed away, wrote something in the Atlantic in, I believe, 2000. And it was kind of a shock to see that Kaczynski was found dead in his cell, and then later it was clear that it was suicide. I'm not trying to hail him or try to glorify him, but he's a human being. He was pretty deranged. He was schizophrenic, but he had help. And I don't think anyone is really giving him. Should we have sympathy for? I mean, he's done his time. Let me get this article, because the article is Washington Post did it. Before he was the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski was a mind control test subject. So he's the anarchist, the so-called Unabomber. He died in a federal prison. It's a story about how he went from boy genius to terrorist, going from star math student to a feared assailant who targeted academics, scientists, and industrialized society as a whole. This is a story by Brian Peace, the Washington Post. He entered Harvard as a 16-year-old on a scholarship after skipping the 6th and 11th grades. And it was there that he was subjected to an experiment run by Harvard psychologist Henry A. Murray that was backed by the CIA. See why you got to worry about these experimenters? They're experimenting on humans. Though he graduated with a mathematics degree, later completing a doctorate in the field before becoming a professor, questions remain over whether or to what extent he was affected by the experiment, which reportedly involved mock interrogations in which participants' beliefs were harshly disparaged. You want to know what contributed to the Unabomber being the way the Unabomber was? Well, could it be his Harvard education? And I tell you, the coincidence of his trauma and my trauma at Harvard, just a coincidence. I was not put through a psychological test. Although you might say, oh, well, Emil, of course, affirmative action, that was a psychological test. Back to the Post story. Murray's study was widely reported to be part of a CIA program codenamed Project MK Ultra, inspired by the use of mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war in Korea by the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea. There's an Asian connection here. The program sought to understand how to control subjects' minds, sometimes using substances such as LSD, according to a document the CIA made publicly available in 2018. There has not been evidence to suggest LSD or similar substances were used at Harvard on Kaczynski. So that was just a general, this is the kind of thing that had LSD, but maybe not on Kaczynski. The document says the project attempted to produce a perfect truth drug for use in interrogating suspected Soviet spies during the Cold War, and generally to explore any other possibilities of mind control. CI Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of many files related to MK Ultra in 1973. That means when I was there, those files are around saying, find me, find me. Nevertheless, Kaczynski disclosed some of his apparent involvement in the study in correspondence from prison with the professor Alston Chase, who later wrote a book about the Unabomber. Chase argued in June 2000 in the Atlantic magazine that Kaczynski's experiences at Harvard, his studies overlapping with his roughly 3-year participation in Murray's experiment, helped create the Unabomber. Can you believe this? You're trying to do your homework in Apple Math and higher math, and they're like interrogating the hell out of you and making you feel like crap. And that sounds like my Harvard experience. Although informal, the psychological experiments. Thus did Kaczynski's Harvard experience shape his anger and legitimize his wrath, wrote Chase, who died last year in 2022. By the time he graduated, all the elements that would ultimately transform him into the Unabomber were in place. While working for what was a precursor to the CIA, Murray conducted an experiment that put subjects under mock interrogations with blinding spotlights and verbal abuse, Chase wrote, citing a report by the psychologist and his colleagues. The Harvard study also involved asking the participants to write essays explaining their worldviews, which are then picked apart by interrogators, according to the History Channel, which cited Murray's description of the sessions as vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive. Harvard did not immediately respond to a request for comment regarding the study. Of course not. Of course not. And I doubt they will. Though there has not been a definitive link between the study and Kaczynski's actions, which killed 3 people and injured 23 others. So he was not a nice guy. But you see how if the Harvard study triggered off that kind of reaction, you can see how the kind of trauma triggered off by the Harvard study. 3 killed, 23 others injured. Some have suggested that the program may have exacerbated his schizophrenia. The Harvard experiment was stressful, and stress aggravates the symptoms of schizophrenia, the psychologist Nigel Barber told History. Otherwise, it would be a mistake to exaggerate the importance of this experience or to see it as a major detriment of his anti-science and anti-technological political views. Others argued against placing too much importance on the influence on the study of Kaczynski. The sociologist Todd Gitlin wrote in a Washington Post review of Chase's book, Harvard and the Unabomber, The Education of an American Terrorist, that the effect of Murray's dubious, unethical experiment on Kaczynski is unknown, which is fair. I mean, I've met Todd Gitlin, and I think he's being fair with that statement. With many of the records regarding the study restricted or destroyed, and with questions about peculiar behavior in Kaczynski's childhood, it is unclear whether the study can be clearly tied to Kaczynski's transformation into a domestic terrorist, Gitlin wrote. In his manifesto published by the Post in 1995, with the encouragement of federal officials, that was a big debate. Kaczynski likened science to a surrogate activity that is directed toward an artificial goal that people set up for themselves merely in order to have some goal to work toward, or some sense of fulfillment. Scientists work mainly for the fulfillment they get out of the work itself, he wrote. Thus, science marches on blindly without regard to the real welfare of the human race or to any other standard, obedient only to the psychological needs of the scientists and of the government officials and corporation executives who provide the funds for research. Man, have no truer words been spoken there? I mean, are they doing it for the good of mankind? Or are they doing it for their own egos? I mean, he may have been schizophrenic. He may have been violent. But maybe he was right in his assessment of what is going on with the scientists who experiment and the scientists who not just experiment on animals, but people, because he was subjected to that. Maybe Kaczynski was right in his criticism, but he was not right in the means by which he expressed his criticism, meaning violence, meaning bombs, meaning the activity that claimed 3 lives. I mean, clearly, that was a line crossed. Anyway, Kaczynski was found in his prison cell over the weekend, and it just made me think about that line between sane and insane, between normal and schizophrenic, and how even among the deranged, they may have a thought that makes sense, but then gets obliterated by when they make no sense and turn violent. All right, one last word on the Tonys. Now, I read from different publications, Post, my columns, but this is pretty much an unscripted show, you know that. And how refreshing the Tonys are. More than one person I talked to about the Tonys said, wow, it's fun. It's free. I mean, this is the thing about award shows. You know, people get uptight, and I know that they really want to sell the commercials. They want to sell all the time that they sold commercials. So it's commercial. It's a show that's a commercial for Broadway that has commercials for cars and whatever, drugs and so they have to march. They've got an outline, but it's fun when it's free flowing. It's fun when people get up there and it's natural, right? Spontaneity. Now, of course, you could do it with dance, right? You say, get up there and shake, girl. There they are. That was fun. But, you know, you got producers who, they can't go 10 minutes, 50 minutes, you know, long on one side and impacts everything else. But they had to. They had to go off script, or they had to not have a script because the writer's strike. They wanted to show solidarity. So that was one good reason to see the Tonys. But the other reason to see the Tonys, and it's really the reason to see the Tonys every year, is to get the magic of theater, even though it's theater seen. It's theater seen through a television lens. But it's not television. I mean, it's television, but it's not like the 3-camera setup. Or it is, but you know, they're taking a picture of the proscenium stage, and there it is. It's theater. You get the liveness, and so it was fitting, I think, to have these theater performers get up there without a script and to speak their truth. And it was good to see Tom Stoppard win for Best Play. Leopoldstadt. I don't think there was another playwright who I was taken with growing up as a young high schooler. You know, Tom Stoppard, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, right? I mean, they're throwing the coin to each other. And then from there, all the other great British playwrights came in the 70s and the 80s. And then I took some courses in British theater, and the Joe Ortons and the Angry Young Men. And no, theater's amazing. We just don't see enough of it, really. And I mean, when I was off Broadway. That was about as close to Broadway as I wanted to get. I was actually off. Here's the thing about Broadway. I mean, you love it, but it will bust you. Broadway will bust you. Broadway, you get a cheap ticket, even online, $69, fees, taxes. It's like 100 and some bucks each, 110, 120. Oh, splurge for the good ones. Okay, it's 160. Oh, you're up to 200 a ticket. A night out in the town, 200 a ticket, 400 for a pair. You want to eat too? Okay. Maybe another 150. All right, so now you're 550. How many Broadway shows do you go on a date? Oh, a babysitter? You got a babysitter too? Oh, no, this is premarital. So no babysitter. So now you can get drinks after. You can afford drinks after. Broadway just busts the budget. And you say, okay, look, we're going to go see Leopoldstadt, but we're in the nosebleeds. Okay. Or we're going to see Kimberly Akimbo, but she's going to look really diminutive from the nosebleeds. I don't even... Kimberly Akimbo is only vaguely related to Emil Amok. I was first, though, and I'm not a musical. But it's fun seeing the Tonys, because I saw the Tonys last year, and seeing them this year, it was good to see a whole new batch of plays. Good to see what revivals there were. Good to see Leopoldstadt. Good to see all these black actors. They didn't win, though. I mean, men and women getting nominated. Good to see Jessica Chastain still doing her thing. The theater special. But I don't know how anyone makes any money. I mean, even the people who are doing it and doing it well and making money, like Andrew Lloyd Webber. I mean, Andrew Lloyd Webber was talking on an interview the other day saying how, how does anyone afford? I mean, he's a star, right? I mean, he's a purveyor of hit shows. And the hit shows are all musicals, mind you. They're all spectacles, because that's what people think people want to see. But I don't know. I think people want to see not spectacle. I think people want to see a good play. I mean, that's why when I go to off Broadway, First Avenue in August, the top ticket at that theater for the new city, $18.50, under $20. Is that half price? No, that's full price. Oh, wow. I'll bring my whole family. Yeah, that's the idea. Bring the community. The conductor, Ishmael Reed's conductor, theater for the new city. August, the week of August 20-something. We open. And then I'm here at the San Francisco Fringe, August 12th through 19th. Actually, key dates. I'm there 3 nights. But I'll put up information soon on amok.com. But the Tonys, it was fun. Fun seeing the actors and actresses, and fun seeing the writers. And Joel Grey was there, and they were honoring him as for lifetime achievement, or like old wise man kind of award. And they wouldn't let him talk. And I thought, wow, that kind of bothered me. All right, that would be a natural lead-in to a poll out that says that the majority of Californians want Senator Dianne Feinstein out. I don't believe it. but actually there are a couple polls. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'll get into that tomorrow. Tomorrow, we didn't have Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez up on Friday. So I've asked him to come tomorrow to talk about the indictment. And I'm sure we'll get into whether Waltine Nauta should flip on Trump. That would be making history. That's the kind of history I want to make. To flip on Trump. That would be it. All right. That's it for the show today. Hey, we're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Right here, right? On Twitter, I've got maybe like 5 viewers on my Twitter feed at Emil Amok. Tucker Carlson has a couple 100,000. He's getting sued by Fox because apparently he wasn't supposed to do that. He's doing it, but wasn't supposed to do that. See this on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. So at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK on Twitter, at Emil Amok 1 on YouTube, on Facebook at EmilGuillermo.media, and also my name. And then we'll put the replay up on amok.com. All right, we do a little meditation on this show. A little. I just point the way. But one day we will come on Zoom where I'll get to look at you and we'll do nothing. And see how invigorating that could be. And so we leave you with a little loving kindness meditation. And so as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Back again tomorrow. Till next time. Mahal Kita.